Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. In the 11th century in Italy, the upper classes began using forks, but shortly afterward, the church declared that they were instruments of the devil and banned them. It was not until 300 or 400 years later that their use became normal. That means that before that, people ate spaghetti with their hands. On average, more snow falls in Hawaii than in New York during the winter. This is because on the island of Hawaii, there are the volcanoes Mauna Kea and Mauna Loa, which have very high elevations, so snow accumulates on their highest parts. More than 100 years ago, in the 19th century, before the invention of mercury amalgams, people's teeth sometimes exploded suddenly. This happened because different metals were used, which could create an electrochemical cell in the mouth, basically turning it into a low-voltage battery. According to its creator, Louis Rayard, for a swimsuit garment to be considered a bikini, it had to be able to pass through a wedding ring, referring to how small it had to be. This was considered a revolution because in the year it was invented, 1946, swimsuits covered a much larger area of the body. A law in India requires doctors to write medical prescriptions with the names of medicines in capital letters and as clearly as possible to avoid mistakes that could lead to health problems due to misreading handwriting. A star explodes in a supernova every 100 years on average in a galaxy. With calculations about the number of galaxies in the universe, 170 billion, it can be concluded that there are at least 53 supernovas exploding somewhere every second. Penitentes are a formation of snow that only occurs in high-altitude areas of the dry Andes in Chile and Argentina, and they occur thanks to conditions such as the dew point being below the freezing point and the speed of the wind. It is believed that they also form on Pluto and on Jupiter's moon Europa. The American Express Black Card, considered the most exclusive credit card in the world, has a minimum annual cost of $10,000, and you must earn at least $1 million a year to have it. It includes some benefits for its holders, such as exclusive airport lounges, among other things, but it is mainly used by people who simply want to show off their money. Pistachios tends to ignite spontaneously when there are many of them together. The absence of liquid combined with their natural oil, heat, and even the friction of their shells create perfect conditions to start flames. In India, there are bridges more than 500 years old that are made with living trunks and roots, which allows them to withstand very strong floods, and even over time, they become stronger since they continue growing. A man named Chris Clark bought the internet domain pizza.com in 1994 for $20, and every year he spent another $20 to renew it, until in 2008 he decided to put it up for sale in an auction. In the end, he sold it for $2,600,000. In the last 500 years, the volcanoes of Iceland have expelled 1/3 of all the lava that has come to the surface of the Earth. It is the region with the most consistently active volcanoes. Cats are 95% tiger. These two animals share a common ancestor that lived 10 million years ago, which is why they share most of their genetic code. This can also be seen in behaviors of domestic cats that tigers also have, such as marking their territory and stalking their prey with a leap. Bananas in the stage of ripening, or when they are ready to eat, have a blue glow under ultraviolet light. This occurs when the chlorophyll they contain begins to break down, causing this reaction. It is the only fruit or plant in general that has this characteristic. Titanium is the 9th most abundant element on planet Earth. However, most of it is found in the core. Extracting this metal from the Earth's crust is very expensive, and processing it generates a very large amount of waste. That is why it is one of the most expensive materials. Fleas experience an acceleration force of around 100 g when they jump, which is 100 times the force of gravity. This is much greater than the launch of a space rocket or the most extreme roller coaster. It would be impossible for a human to withstand that pressure. Salmon have their characteristic color because of the accumulation of pigments that come from their main food source, crustaceans. The same thing happens with flamingos and their pink plumage. Durian, a fruit with a strong odor similar to natural gas, provides almost instant energy due to the amount of carbohydrates it contains. It also has a high potassium content. Because of its smell, it is banned in some hotels and airlines. After analyzing the oldest cave paintings found in caves, it was determined from the relative size of the fingers that at least 75% of the handprints were made by women. The galaxy M100 is so far away from us and its light takes so long to arrive that if advanced beings exist there and could observe us with an extremely powerful telescope, they would see the time when the dinosaurs were becoming extinct. The United States Patent Office has the power to invalidate any patent if they consider that it puts national security at risk or if it is a threat to the stability of the economy. To this day, more than 5,000 patents have been prohibited. The naval forces of Sweden detected sounds that they suspected were hostile submarines from the Soviet Union, which was causing diplomatic conflicts, until they realized that the sounds actually came from gases released by fish living in the area. This research won a Nobel Prize. If the Statue of Liberty were melted down, the resulting metal would be worth less than a single apartment in New York. The statue contains 31 tons of copper and 125 tons of steel, which would have a total value of $227,600. It is 30 times more likely for lightning to strike a giraffe than a human. This number was calculated based on 5 documented cases between 1996 and 2010. Because at that time there were only around 140,000 giraffes, the probability was calculated as 0.003 lightning strikes per 1,000 giraffes per year, 30 times higher than the statistic in humans. There is evidence that identification through fingerprints began to be used in China since the 7th century in legal documents and contracts. However, for police investigations, it was first used to solve a case in 1892 in Argentina. Pillbugs, also called woodlice, have the ability to digest toxic heavy metals. These terrestrial crustaceans accumulate elements such as lead, cadmium, and arsenic and crystallize them into inert structures called granules. This ability allows them to survive in contaminated soils where other animals could not. All elements heavier than iron, such as gold, silver, copper, nickel, and others, were formed during the explosion of a supernova at some point. In a process of rapid neutron capture, the extreme conditions allow the creation of very heavy atomic nuclei. That means that part of your phone was at some point inside a supernova. There are 3 countries that are completely surrounded by another country. Lesotho is surrounded by the territory of South Africa. San Marino is surrounded by Italy, and the Vatican is also inside Italy. All other countries either have access to the sea or border 2 or more different countries. While watching the movie Stuart Little in 2009, Hungarian art historian Gergely Barkey recognized the painting Sleeping Lady with Black Vase by Robert Barani. It had been missing for more than 90 years. It was in the background of a scene being used as decoration for a room. In 2014, this painting was sold at an auction for $285,000. The Apollo computer was programmed by a team led by Margaret Hamilton, who coined the term software engineering. The code was written on paper and then literally woven into memory ropes with wires that passed through small magnetic rings. Each one represented a 1 when the wire passed through the ring and a 0 when it passed outside. Some dogs seem to have eyebrows, and thanks to this, they are more expressive. This is due to an evolutionary trait that has been favored by humans through selective breeding, resulting in better communication. In short, we gave dogs eyebrows. Workers at Disney World have a procedure to evacuate people in case of an emergency in which they hold hands, form a human barrier, and walk toward the exit until all visitors are outside. Mount Augustus in Australia, despite its name, is actually considered the largest monolith or rock in the world. It measures 3,628 feet in height and is believed to have formed about 1,650,000,000 years ago. In a soccer match between Denmark and Iran in 2003, an Iranian player picked up the ball with his hands, thinking the end of the first half had been whistled after hearing a sound coming from the stands. The referee awarded a penalty. The player, Morten Veghorst, intentionally missed the penalty because it had been a misunderstanding. There is an island near Venice, Italy, called Poveglia, that is considered haunted, and for that reason, it is known as the Island of Ghosts. It is currently uninhabited, but in the past it was used as a fort, a quarantine station, a hospital, and a mental asylum. Actress Kate Winslet broke the record for the longest time filming underwater while making a scene for Avatar 2. Winslet held her breath for more than 7 minutes, surpassing the 6 minutes that Tom Cruise had reached while filming the movie Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation. The most remote inhabited place in the world is a settlement called Edinburgh of the Seven Seas. located on one of the islands of Tristan da Cunha in the Atlantic Ocean. To get there, you have to take a ship from Cape Town, South Africa, which takes 6 days to arrive, since the island does not have an airport. The nearest settlement is 1,350 miles away on the island of St. Helena. In the 18th century, a carpenter named John Harrison revolutionized navigation when he invented a marine chronometer capable of measuring longitude. It worked by keeping the exact time of Greenwich during long sea voyages. Navigators compared that time with local noon, determined by the position of the sun. With that, they could calculate the longitude they were at, something that, until that moment, had been extremely difficult. Actor Jackie Chan began his career as a stunt double in Bruce Lee's films Fist of Fury and Enter the Dragon. In one of the scenes, Bruce Lee accidentally hit him in the face for real. After that, he promised that he would invite him to make more films, but those were never made. The ship Knock Nevis, previously known as the Seawise Giant, was the largest ship in the world. It measured approximately 1,503 feet long, and because of its size, it could not cross the Panama Canal or the English Channel. It was also considered the largest moving object ever made by humans. It was dismantled in 2009. Thousands of years ago, the first humans who arrived in what are now the islands of Sumatra, Java, Borneo, and Bali arrived on foot from southern Asia, since the sea level was lower at that time and land bridges formed. Meanwhile, the humans who populated the area of eastern Indonesia, unlike those of the other islands, had arrived there on rafts from Asia many years earlier and settled that region before later also going to New Guinea and Australia. According to the study Basic Color Terms from 1969, all languages develop terms for colors in a predictable sequence. Black and white appear first, invariably followed by red. The blue-green distinction is less frequent. Many cultures use a single term for both, while the terms for purple, pink, and gray are the last to appear. Only the most advanced languages have them. Edwin Land invented the instant camera after his 3-year-old daughter asked him why she could not see the photo that had just been taken. 1 hour after that, he already had the idea for the patent. Shortly afterward, he founded the company Polaroid. Out of 2,600 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, only 20 are dedicated to fictional characters. Among them are Bugs Bunny, Godzilla, Kermit the Frog, Shrek, Mickey Mouse, The Simpsons, Snoopy, and the Chevrolet Suburban, which is the only object that has a star. There are 3 countries in the world that do not have a single forest: Qatar, Oman, and San Marino. In contrast, the countries with the largest forest territories are Russia, Brazil, and Canada. Once, a French cavalry squadron captured a fleet of Dutch ships. This happened in 1795 during the French Revolutionary Wars, and it was possible because the seawater where they were located was frozen, allowing the horses to approach the ships that had become trapped. When the series The Sopranos was airing, the producer once said that the FBI contacted him to tell him that the real mafia members they were investigating at that time had become paranoid, since they believed that one of them was telling stories to the creators of the series because of how similar it was to reality. There is a lake in Virginia, United States, called Mount Storm that serves as a cooling reservoir for a coal power plant. This keeps its temperature always high, making it ideal for swimming even on days when the temperature is below zero. There is an island called Inaccessible Island in the Tristan da Cunha archipelago in the Atlantic Ocean, where the smallest flightless bird species in the world lives, the Tristan da Cunha rail, which measures 6.7 inches and has managed to thrive because there are no predators there, unlike what has happened with other flightless birds on other islands, such as the dodo, which became extinct. Among the 4 kings in a deck of playing cards, the King of Hearts is the only one that does not have a mustache. This distinction is due to a printing error from the 15th century. Originally, all the kings had mustaches, but an engraver made a mistake and created the mold of the King of Hearts without a mustache, something that was adopted by later designs and has remained until today. Canada does not have an exact date on which it obtained its independence from Great Britain. When the Supreme Court established a date, they decided that independence had been acquired in the period between the signing of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919 and the Statute of Westminster in 1931. The first restaurant that incorporated a production line to prepare food, managing to standardize preparation across different locations, was the White Castle chain that opened its doors in 1921, considered the first fast food restaurant. The away uniforms of Major League Baseball teams are gray because 100 years ago, Visiting teams did not have access to laundries during their trips, so making them gray made stains and dirt on the uniforms less noticeable. After that, it remained as a tradition. Female turkeys can lay eggs that develop without needing to be fertilized by a male. This is called parthenogenesis. All offspring that result from this process are always males. This phenomenon is more common in varieties of reptiles, and it is unusual that turkeys have it. During the funeral of United States President Andrew Jackson in 1845, his pet parrot began saying swear words when it became excited because many people had gathered. Jackson had taught him those words in previous years. They had to take him to another room because he would not stop. Starting in the 1950s, brands began promoting products in cans that could be thrown away after use. Before this, bottles had to be returned to be reused. This disposable culture, which later introduced plastic packaging, has contributed to the global waste crisis of today. The French tried to change the system of time in 1793. They began using what they called French Revolutionary Time, which, instead of 24 hours, had only 10 hours in the day. Each hour had 100 minutes, and each minute 100 seconds, similar to the decimal metric system. However, it stopped being used only 17 months later because it caused a lot of confusion among people. The newly built stadium in Las Vegas, called the Sphere, has inside it the largest 16K high-resolution screen in the world. It also has directional spatial audio, so one section of the audience can be hearing something different from another section. This is achieved thanks to the 164,000 speakers of different sizes installed in the venue. In 2002, a publishing house in China released a fake sequel to the Harry Potter books called Harry Potter and Bao Shuolong, which was actually the text of the book The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, but modified. They changed the names of the characters to names from the Harry Potter universe. The Library of Alexandria, located in Egypt, had approximately 400,000 written scrolls, the equivalent of 100,000 books, making it the place that stored the largest amount of information in the world at the time. However, it was destroyed in the 3rd century after years of decline due to regional conflicts. When Rajput warriors in India went into battle, they placed fake trunks on their horses, making them look like baby elephants to the enemy's war elephants. This caused them to instinctively avoid attacking them. Dover Castle, the largest castle in England, has more than 3 miles of secret escape tunnels that were used during wartime to escape from or enter the structure. Many of these have not yet been discovered. The atomic clocks in GPS satellites are programmed to compensate for the time dilation that occurs according to the theory of relativity. If this small adjustment were not made, GPS devices would make errors of up to 6.2 miles over time. The movies Spider-Man, Zoolander, Men in Black 2, Stuart Little 2, and Armageddon had to be digitally altered, or some scenes had to be changed. This was done as a sign of respect, because they contained scenes involving the Twin Towers of New York. The designers of the game Zelda, A Link Between Worlds for the 3DS, designed everything tilted, including the maps and the characters. This was done so it could be viewed well in the classic top-down camera perspective. As part of an art installation in New York, some artists attempted to print all of English Wikipedia in 2015. They generated a PDF file with the 7,473 volumes required. They only managed to produce around 100 with 700 pages each. Then they created the outer covers of another 1,980 volumes. This entire installation was meant to show the true size of this website. On old maps, they often drew sea monsters and strange creatures. They did this to indicate unexplored territories. It was like a way of saying that if you go there, it is at your own risk. During the days when Rihanna's song Umbrella was at #1 on the music charts, unusual storms and floods were recorded in the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and Romania, to the point that British tabloids began using the term Rihanna curse. Alka-Seltzer was created when the president of the company, Miles Laboratories, was reading the newspaper and came across advice from an editor, a home remedy to relieve the flu that consisted of mixing baking soda and aspirin. The sports drink brand of YouTubers KSI and Logan Paul, Prime, had total sales of $250 million in 2022. There were even viral videos showing shortages of the product in stores such as Walmart and people fighting to buy the last units on the shelves. A rock carved 3,500 years ago by a student in ancient Babylon was discovered, in which he had written several humorous riddles about beer, pregnancies, and what is considered the first recorded insult about someone's mother in all of history. While the helicopter attack scenes were being filmed for the movie Apocalypse Now, the helicopters that had been lent by the Philippine Air Force for filming suddenly flew away abruptly and disappeared. They had been called to repel a rebel attack in real life. Shortly afterward, they returned to continue filming. The drink gin and tonic was originally created by the British East India Company as a way for soldiers to take quinine, an alkaloid used to treat malaria. But because it had a very bitter taste, they added sugar, lime, water, and gin to make it taste better. That is how this popular mixture was born. The only times Elvis Presley performed outside the United States were in 3 Canadian cities near the border. According to statements from people close to him, he was afraid of flying. Some voice actors in the video game Grand Theft Auto 5 were real convicts. One of them had even been released from prison the day before recording his lines. They were also given the opportunity to modify the script and offer suggestions to make the dialogue feel more authentic. The movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory from 1971 has a different name from the original book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This change was made to sell chocolate bars and other Wonka brand products. Unfortunately, because of logistics problems, almost no stores had them when the movie was released. Mozart's widow, Constanze Mozart, later married a diplomat from Denmark, and together they dedicated themselves to writing biographies of the famous composer that, to this day, are considered among the most reliable. Today, although Mozart's grave is unmarked because he had no money when he died, the Danish diplomat's grave has an inscription that says, "Here rests the husband of Mozart's widow." The color of ladybugs is not meant to attract attention. On the contrary, the red and black color in nature signals to predators that the animal is poisonous and not worth pursuing. In addition to that, they also have a defense mechanism that releases a foul-smelling liquid that comes out of their knees. All Rolls-Royce automobiles manufactured in the last 20 years have a line painted by hand by the artist Mark Court, who does his work without the help of any machine. More complex custom designs can also be ordered. In 2021, Apple reported that it earned $14 billion in revenue from mobile games offered in the App Store, from which it receives a percentage of each transaction. That year, it earned more revenue than Nintendo and Microsoft, despite not being a company dedicated to video games. The circle on the flag of Bangladesh is not placed in the center. It is closer to the side where the flagpole is attached. This was done on purpose because when the flag waves, it appears to be exactly in the center. It was calculated that $21 billion in gift cards have been lost in the United States. This is because people do not redeem them, and the validity period of the balance expires. The region of Almería in Spain, despite its dry climate, produces an important portion of the fruits and vegetables sold in Europe. Methods such as imported soil and hydroponics are used, and it is the place with the most greenhouses in the world. There are so many that they can be seen from space. To participate in the series The Mandalorian as the main villain Moff Gideon, actor Giancarlo Esposito asked the creator of the series, Jon Favreau, to give his character a cape. It was his only request because he wanted to wear a cape. Identical twins have different fingerprints. This difference is due to external factors that are not related to genetics, such as the position of the fetus during development or the growth rate of the fingers. Therefore, your evil twin cannot blame you for anything he may have done. The present-day capital of Slovenia, the city of Ljubljana, has belonged to 10 different countries or territories in the last 200 years, including the Illyrian provinces, Austria, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, Italy, Germany during the Second World War, Yugoslavia as a country, and finally, Slovenia. Queen guitarist Brian May built his first electric guitar when he was 16 years old. The springs for the tremolo came from a motorcycle, the tuning pegs were knitting needles, and the wood came from a fireplace. The ink of several ballpoint pens has an aroma similar to termite pheromones, so if you draw a line on paper near termites, they will follow it. Oil was first used as fuel in China more than 2,000 years ago. They had drilled wells and bamboo pipelines that they used for salt production by evaporating water. By the year 1000, it was already being used to heat homes and for lighting. The Okavango River in southern Africa has the particular characteristic that it does not reach the ocean, but instead reaches the desert. It has a mouth or a delta, but it does not lead anywhere. It is established as a World Heritage Site. However, in recent years, it has been drying up, which could completely change the ecosystem of the region. There is an anecdote about the British government in India establishing a reward for every captured cobra in order to eliminate them. This had the opposite effect. People began breeding cobras to obtain the reward money and, as a result, the population of wild cobras increased when the program was canceled and the breeders released them. Soap operas are traditionally called soap operas in English. This is because the earliest ones, which were broadcast on the radio, were directed at housewives, and soap companies, considering them their main market, advertised their cleaning products during the commercials. The first Oscar that was to be awarded at the Academy Awards in the category of Best Actor was going to be given to Rin Tin Tin, a German shepherd dog that starred in many movies. However, considering that the image of the awards might be affected if in the first edition they gave the prize to a dog, they instead awarded the Oscar to Emil Jannings. The scene where Peter Parker catches the food that was about to fall in Spider-Man 1 was done without using digital effects, but they had to repeat the shot 156 times before it worked. Meanwhile, members of the YouTube channel Corridor Digital recreated the scene the same way and succeeded in only 33 takes. The only living things that can be permanently seen from space are corals, specifically the Great Barrier Reef near Australia. Large populations of krill can also be seen from space, but only at certain times. In 2014, the sports brand Reebok tried to sell bacon as part of an advertising campaign aimed at CrossFit enthusiasts, due to the popularity of the paleo diet, which is high in animal protein, vegetables, and seeds. But shortly afterward, they stopped doing it and never mentioned it again. The richest man in the country of Georgia, Bidzina Ivanishvili, lives in a $50 million house mainly made of glass and metal called The Glass, or Glass Castle. The entire city of Tbilisi can be seen from the upper floor. The city of Damascus in Syria is the oldest city in the world that has been continuously inhabited. It is believed that people settled there at least 11,000 years ago. It has more than 125 historical monuments from the different periods of the place, such as the Umayyad Mosque, built in the 8th century. In the city of Kazan in Russia, there is a structure called the Temple of All Religions that combines religious architectural styles and serves as a cultural center for peaceful encounters. It is still not finished. For their participation in the series Screen Queens, singers Ariana Grande and Lea Michele requested as a condition that they would not have to scream. In the end, they only recorded a couple of screams in an audio booth that were later added digitally to the scenes where they pretended to do it. In Finland, the World Championship of Mobile Phone Throwing is held every year. This event was created in the year 2000 by a Nokia employee to raise awareness about the increase of toxic waste from discarded phones. The sand dunes located farthest north in the world are in the region of Saskatchewan in Canada. They can reach up to 98 feet. In Finland, there are also sand dunes, but they are near a beach and are smaller than those in Canada. In 2010, the police in Belfast, Northern Ireland decided to use the sound played by ice cream trucks to calm a riot that was taking place. And it worked. In Florida, an underwater music festival is held every year that includes concerts broadcast through underwater speakers. The musicians are divers with real instruments and some imaginary ones, such as the fish flute. Its purpose is to promote the preservation of coral reefs. Japanese card games such as Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon are inspired by a card game from the Edo period called Obake Karuta, which had creatures from Japanese mythology drawn on them. One of the grotesques of the Washington National Cathedral, which are traditionally gargoyles and serve to drain water from the roofs, has the shape of Darth Vader, the character from Star Wars. It was the result of a contest for children where they drew shapes they wanted for these sculptures when the Northwest Tower was being built in the 1980s. The Amazon River is the longest river in the world, measuring a little more than 4,350 miles. Despite that, there is not a single permanent bridge that crosses it. During the 1970s, there were 6 different Flintstones-themed amusement parks in the United States. One of these was put up for sale in 2015 for $2 million. According to a report, appearances by Taylor Swift during NFL broadcasts of Kansas City Chiefs games have generated an increase of $120 million in brand value. Female viewership ratings increased by 53% in the group aged 12 to 17. There is a distant star that is so bright that it would illuminate in a way similar to the sun from our perspective at a distance of 33 light-years from Earth. For comparison, the sun is only 8 light minutes away from us. During the time of the Roman Empire, many of the mummies prepared in Egypt were accompanied by realistic portraits of the people painted on wooden panels. Today, around 900 of these portraits have survived the passage of time. Chile has a north to south length of 2,653 miles. If the length of Chile were used as a unit of measurement, as shown on this map, the entire world would be less than 5 Chiles away from Chile. The farthest point would be the central region of China. In 2008, Lamborghini gave the police of Italy the fastest patrol car in the world at that time, the Gallardo model, with special equipment that included a cooler to transport organs for transplants. In 2009, it became unusable after a crash. The luxury watch brands Rolex and Tudor belong to the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, which means they cannot be divided or sold, and they do not distribute dividends. The foundation does not pay taxes, and the profits are used to support initiatives that help advance human knowledge, although the exact figures of their donations are not known. The country where people participate the most in gambling is Australia. 80% of adults in that country regularly take part in some form of betting, whether sports betting or casino games, either physical or electronic. The band Iron Maiden sued the developers of a video game called Iron Maiden for $2 million because of the similarity in its name. In the end, they reached an agreement, and the video game changed its name to Ion Fury. The island of Java in Indonesia has a population larger than that of Russia, even though it has less than 1% of the size of Russia's territory. In 2007, 90% of the internet connection of the entire country of Vietnam went down because fishermen cut one of the main submarine cables to sell the materials. All octopuses are venomous. They use their beak, the only hard part of their body, to inject saliva into their prey. There is even an octopus that lives near the Arctic whose venom can remain active at very low temperatures. For humans, only a few species represent a real danger. Professional sumo wrestlers in Japan are forbidden from driving cars or motorcycles because, due to their size, they do not fit in some small cars, and they could also suffer more damage than an average person if they get into an accident. The only place where the Japanese language is the official language is on the island of Angaur in Palau, where only around 130 people live. In Japan, Japanese is not specified as an official language. This happened because when the Constitution of Palau was written, many of those who participated in the process had been educated in Japanese due to the South Pacific Mandate of 1919. However, currently no person on that island speaks Japanese. There was a building in the city of Tokyo that consisted of modular capsule rooms that could be replaced and renewed periodically, resembling the cells of a living organism. It became a famous construction, but it was demolished in April 2022 due to lack of maintenance. In the 1930s, a solution was proposed to make parking easier. Cars would have a fifth wheel that would extend from the rear so they could move sideways. Although it was not a bad idea, vehicle manufacturers rejected it. A study confirmed that cows can produce 3% more milk if they listen to calm and slow music every day. They also played electronic music and heavy metal for them, but the cows did not like it as much. If NASA had continued with a budget similar to what it was receiving during the Apollo missions, they already had a developed plan to achieve a manned mission to Mars in 1983, and before that, they would have built a lunar base. Instead, the United States government focused on developing the space shuttle. In the Philippines, there is a small island called Vulcan Point that is located in the crater lake of the Taal volcano, which in turn is an island in a lake, and that lake is located inside the Philippines, which itself is also made up of islands. So it is an island in a lake, inside an island in a lake, inside an island. Building sandcastles is illegal on some beaches in the world, such as in Tenerife, Spain, and on the beach of Eraclea near Venice, Italy. Slot machines in casinos traditionally have fruit symbols because of regulations from the early 20th century that prohibited card symbols. The inventor of the first machines decided to draw fruits on them, and the tradition has remained until today. Scientists managed to accelerate the evolution of some snails by exposing them to the metal platinum. They developed without shells, just like slugs that originate from snails. Although movies portray velociraptors as skilled hunters that cooperate in groups to surround their prey, in reality, scientists say they did not have that cooperative behavior, and even fought among themselves for the prey. An antipode is a point that is exactly on the opposite side of planet Earth, and, because of the location of the continents, some countries end up directly opposite another country. For example, Argentina and Chile are on the opposite side of China, or Spain and Portugal with New Zealand. The Pacific Ocean is so large that it has two antipodal points. The first proposal to build the Channel Tunnel, or Eurotunnel, to connect Great Britain and France was presented in 1802. According to this plan, it would have oil lamps, horse-drawn carriages, and an artificial island in the middle where horses could be changed. But this proposal was rejected. It was not until 1994 that the Eurotunnel opened. The national symbol of Ireland is a golden harp, whose first use dates back to the 13th century. It is the only country that has a musical instrument as its official symbol, which appears on coats of arms, coins, passports, and official documents. During the filming of the movie Noah's Ark from 1928, so much water was used, more than 528 gallons, in the flood scene, that 3 extras drowned and several others were severely injured. The director, Michael Curtiz, would later go on to make the film Casablanca. The giant checks that are given when awards are presented are also accepted by banks. However, they may charge an extra fee for the service because it takes longer to verify and process than a normal-sized check. There is an area of more than 772 square miles in Africa, between Egypt and Sudan, called Bir Tawil, that does not belong to any country and has not been claimed by anyone, being considered terra nullius, or no man's land. Attempts to claim the area and turn it into an autonomous country have been ignored by the international community. An analyst found a correlation between the most important moments in the career of actress Anne Hathaway and the percentage increase in the stock price of Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway. Every time the actress trends, the stock goes up. Lesotho, in Africa, is the only country in which all of its territory is located above approximately 3,280 feet above sea level. A person's hair could support the weight of up to 2 elephants, approximately 26,400 pounds. This is thanks to the flexibility and combined strength of the more than 100,000 hairs that are on the average human head. The movie Blade Runner and several other science fiction films, including Minority Report, are based on short stories by writer Philip K. Dick, who is one of the most important figures of the science fiction genre. The city of Plymouth, the capital of Montserrat, had to be completely evacuated and became a ghost town in 1997 due to the sudden eruptions of a volcano that had been inactive for centuries. After that, the government moved to a town in the north of the island, but they left Plymouth as the honorary capital. The guitarist of the heavy metal band Anthrax, Dan Spitz, retired from playing because he began to see it as a monotonous job. So he decided to pursue his dream instead, which is what he does now: making and repairing watches. The word hippopotamus comes from the Greek hippos, which means horse, and potamos, which means river. Therefore, the name hippopotamus is equivalent to river horse. Starbucks spends more money on health insurance for its employees than on coffee beans. Chamorro is a language spoken in Guam and in the Northern Mariana Islands. Currently, fewer than 100,000 people use it, and this number has been declining since the United States took control of the island of Guam after the Second World War and forced schools to use English. Antarctica is considered the largest desert in the world because, despite containing the largest reserve of frozen water in the world, there is so little precipitation that it falls into the desert category. Being able to walk on burning coals does not require intense meditation work or supernatural power to achieve. In reality, anyone can do it because hot charcoal is a poor conductor of heat and will not have enough time to damage the feet of someone who walks across it quickly enough. But it is still necessary to consult an expert and take safety measures before doing something like this. The largest graffiti ever made consists of a single line that the artist Momo created in Manhattan, almost 8 miles long, spelling his name. A superhabitable planet is a hypothetical planet that has conditions more suitable for the appearance and evolution of life than Earth itself. So far, 24 planets that could be superhabitable have been identified, but more studies are needed to confirm this. Hummingbirds can reach speeds equivalent to traveling in 1 second, a distance 400 times their own body length. In that sense, the speed they achieve relative to their body size is greater than that of a jet airplane. Director Stanley Kubrick destroyed all the sets and models that appeared in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. This was done to prevent a sequel from being made at some point, and, at least until now, he succeeded. Olympic lifeguards who are present at all swimming events earn around $340 for the 20 days their service is required. In general, they do not have to do anything since Olympic swimmers are usually very skilled, but the rules say that lifeguards must be watching at all times. Unlike dogs, cats cannot follow a vegetarian diet because of their biological composition, since they would develop health problems. In 2013, a flight traveling from Los Angeles to New York had to divert to another city to remove a passenger. It was a woman who would not stop singing the Whitney Houston song, "I Will Always Love You," and refused to cooperate with the flight attendants. At a concert by the band The Who in 1969, a man climbed onto the stage to try to take the microphone and speak, but he was struck by the singer and the guitarist. The man was actually a police officer who was trying to warn everyone that there was a fire in the building next door. The guitarist was arrested. George Lucas allowed the members of the pop band NSYNC to make a cameo in the movie Star Wars Episode II, Attack of the Clones, at the special request of his daughters. These scenes were filmed, but were eventually removed during the final cut of the movie and will probably never be released. Archaeologists found fossilized bread from 14,000 years ago at a site in Jordan where a settlement of gatherers and hunters was established. This means that bread existed before agriculture and may have been one of the main motivations for people to begin cultivating crops. To camouflage aircraft factories in the suburbs of Los Angeles during the Second World War, the United States Army built simulated neighborhoods on the rooftops. These included details such as fake cars, roads, houses, and vegetation. Actors were even hired to inhabit these spaces. There is a megalithic monument in the middle of the Sahara Desert that was built around 6,000 years ago, 1,000 years before Stonehenge. It consists of 30 rocks arranged in the circle, and inside there are 6 more rocks that are believed to be related to constellations. A vehicle was designed that can travel underground in the same way a submarine moves through water, called the Terrahawk. It works with a drill tip hot enough to melt rock and carve a path while leaving a tunnel behind. Because it required too much power, it was planned to run on nuclear energy. However, it has never been built. There is a city in New Zealand called Rotorua that has a constant smell of rotten eggs in the air. This is due to the sulfur that comes from swamp areas in the region, but there are still residents and tourists because of the hot springs found there. According to a study, people prefer interacting with robots that have female characteristics, such as the voice, compared to those with male characteristics. This was observed in hotels that use robotic staff. To publicize the defeat of a very important adversary, the ancient Romans built statues in honor of Hannibal Barca, the Carthaginian general who crossed the Alps and nearly conquered Rome. The literal translation in Mandarin Chinese of the Great Wall of China is the Long City. The Mangalica is a rare breed of domestic pig that has unusual curly hair growth on its body, similar to that of a sheep. It can have black, red, or blonde hair. Although the African gray parrot can memorize and imitate a large number of words and is one of the most intelligent animals in the world, the species did not pass the mirror test. When they see a mirror, they do not realize it is themselves and attack their own reflection. To produce 2.2 pounds of honey, bees must visit approximately 1,440,000 flowers. This work is done by a group of around 200 worker bees throughout their lifetime, which is roughly between 30 and 60 days. Once, actor Charles Chaplin, before becoming world famous, declared that cinema was only a passing fad, and that what audiences were interested in seeing were actors of flesh and blood performing on stage as they had done in theater for centuries. People who eat slowly are 42% less likely to be overweight or obese. Even those who eat at a normal speed have 29% less risk of being overweight. This, according to a study from Kyushu University in Japan. This happens because the brain takes about 20 minutes to register that we have eaten enough. Despite being far behind in the standings, Australian Stephen Bradbury won the gold medal in speed skating at the 2002 Olympic Games because all the competitors ahead of him fell in the final meters. Something similar happened in the 2 races before the final. Gonzalo Guerrero was a Spanish castaway who arrived on the Yucatan Peninsula in 1511. He was taken prisoner by the Maya, but eventually gained their trust and freedom. He married the daughter of Nachan Ka'an, Lord of Chactemal, adopted Maya culture, and fought against the Spanish conquerors. Guerrero is considered the first European to fully integrate into Maya culture. If it is properly sealed, canned food can last indefinitely. A man named Barry Lely made the promise to keep a whole canned chicken stored to eat it when his 50th wedding anniversary arrived. When the date came, he did keep his promise, ate the chicken, and did not get sick. Meat that is vacuum sealed has a slightly purple coloration, but since people would find it strange and would not buy it in the supermarket, it is treated with carbon monoxide and other compounds so it keeps a red color. In the 1950s, Boeing B-47 nuclear bombers had to perform the special Immelman maneuver, in which they released the bombs while making a parabolic arc. They did this so they would not be consumed by the giant fireball resulting from the explosion. The original Batmobile from the first Batman series from 1966 was sold for $4.2 million. Only one was built, but afterward, countless replicas were made that are sold much more cheaply. The phrase hacer un oso, which means to feel embarrassed or experience secondhand embarrassment, is believed to come from a story from the Middle Ages in which some people had pet bears that they trained to perform dances and other acts that could be considered ridiculous, so that people would give them money in the street. Soon afterward, this became a well-known spectacle, and people began adopting it as a phrase when someone was doing something ridiculous. The pygmy titi is the smallest primate in the world. It measures less than 7.9 inches and weighs 3.5 ounces. They live in the tropical lowlands of the forests of the western Amazon. Runner Usain Bolt ate 100 McNuggets daily for 10 days while he was at the Beijing 2008 Olympic Games. This was to make sure he would not get sick from eating something different from what he was used to. For several editions of the Olympic Games, McDonald's has set up a restaurant where they offer free food for athletes in the Olympic Village. There is a very large area in the center of South America where the magnetic field of planet Earth is weaker. This is known as the South Atlantic anomaly. Space agencies have to make speed adjustments to satellites that pass through that area. There are playlists on Spotify and other music services with special songs to perform CPR at the correct rhythm, between 100 and 120 compressions per minute. They include songs such as Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees and Dreams by Fleetwood Mac. It is recommended to have a premium subscription so the rhythm is not interrupted by advertisements in an emergency. In the animated series Jackie Chan Adventures, the character of Jackie Chan's niece was played by his real-life niece, Stacy Chan. Despite this, the character of Jackie Chan was not played by Jackie Chan. Many people complete the necessary paperwork for their pets to be registered as emotional support animals, which allows them to take them on airplanes and enter places where animals are normally not allowed. There is a zone in the middle of the Pacific Ocean where great white sharks gather. Even though they are a coastal species, that place is not their habitat, and there is no food there. No one really knows why this behavior occurs, but studies are being conducted about it. From 1928 to 1972, India won medals in field hockey at every edition of the Olympic Games: 7 gold, 1 silver, and 2 bronze. However, in 1976, grass fields were replaced with a synthetic version that is more expensive and difficult for athletes in that country to access, which immediately affected their performance. In the following 9 Olympic Games, they have won only 1 medal. When traveling to Iceland, one of the recommendations for tourists states that the country's drinking water may have a smell similar to rotten eggs or sulfur. However, it can be safely consumed and does not have a bad taste. This occurs because of a treatment they use so temperature variations do not cause the pipes to break. Although the energy drink company Red Bull was founded in Austria, its story began in Thailand. In 1976, the drink Krating Dang was launched in Thailand and was especially popular with truck drivers because it helped them stay alert longer. Soon afterward, it was discovered by an Austrian businessman who partnered with the Thai producers so it could finally be launched in Austria as Red Bull in 1987. In Japan, there are more than twice as many 7-Eleven stores as in the United States, the country where the chain originated: 21,000 in Japan and 9,300 in the United States. In Tokyo alone, there are more than 2,000 branches, and they offer a wider variety of products compared with branches in other countries. According to specialized facial recognition software designed to detect emotions, the Mona Lisa has an expression that is 83% happy, 9% disgusted, 6% fearful, and 2% angry. During the filming of the movie Ben-Hur from 1959, blue dye had to be used in the water of the giant pool where the ship scenes were filmed to achieve the optimal color. During one of these scenes, an extra fell into the water and ended up completely dyed blue, so the studio MGM had to keep paying him his full salary until the color disappeared days later. As part of an experiment, Japanese astronaut Koichi Wakata wore the same underwear for 1 month on the International Space Station. This underwear was made with special antibacterial materials so that it could be used for a long time even if he exercised every day. If you owe nothing and your total wealth is zero, you have more money than 25% of all people in the world. There are 2 billion people who have negative wealth, meaning their debts exceed their assets and capital. Many statistics that are presented do not take this fact into account. Reaching the center of the Milky Way would take about 25,000 years traveling at the speed of light. Our solar system is located in one of the spiral arms, which means the center is quite far away. 2,500 years ago, the Persians invented a method to make and store ice in the middle of the desert. It is called a yakhchal. These are cone-shaped buildings connected by underground water channels that take advantage of evaporative cooling. To this day, many people still use a version of this method. Philo Farnsworth, considered the creator of television, hated his invention for years because he did not believe it was something useful for society. His opinion finally changed when he watched the arrival of Man on the Moon live in 1969 on television. If a domestic pig is released into the wild, within a few months it will grow tusks, more hair, and become more aggressive, returning to its natural state. The country with the lowest percentage of population with obesity is Vietnam, with 2.1%, while first place is Nauru, with 61%. The 7 wonders of the ancient world only existed at the same time for a period of about 60 years, and today only the Great Pyramid of Egypt remains. All the others were destroyed. The television show Pimp My Ride was once fined for installing a television inside a steering wheel. The fine was $16,000, since placing something that distracts the driver is prohibited. Plants can sense the vibrations of water flowing beneath the ground. This was demonstrated by observing how roots tend to search for and grow toward pipes where water flows even though the exterior is dry. The light that blinks at the very top of the Capitol Records Tower in Los Angeles spells the word Hollywood in Morse code permanently since the building opened in 1956. There is a place in the state of Wyoming, United States, that is part of the Great Continental Divide Basin where a stream of water splits into two. One flow leads to the Pacific Ocean, and the other leads to the Atlantic Ocean. It is the only hydrological phenomenon of this type in the world. In 2013, before a soccer match between Liechtenstein and England, the national anthem of Great Britain, God Save the Queen, was played twice because at that time it was also the anthem of Liechtenstein. This melody was used by many countries as their national anthem before the 20th century, including Russia, Germany, Switzerland, and Iceland, which later abandoned it when creating their own anthem. Production of the movie Mad Max Fury Road had to change going to film disappeared overnight because during that season there was more rain than usual, which caused vegetation to grow. Therefore, they decided to move to a desert in Namibia. Bolivia is the country with the most official languages of all, with 37. Spanish, and 36 other local languages. By contrast, Australia, Eritrea, Luxembourg, Sweden, and Tuvalu do not have an official language either nationally or in their subdivisions. Sony sold Walkman music players that came inside water bottles and could be purchased from vending machines. This was done to demonstrate that they were truly waterproof. The country where the most instant noodles are consumed is China. It is estimated that every year in China, around 40 billion servings are purchased. Second place is Indonesia, with 12 billion per year. The only way the BBC could record its own live programs in the 1950s was by pointing a film camera at a television while they were broadcasting. It was the only way to preserve live programs until videotapes were invented in 1959. For this reason, the only recording that exists of the science fiction series The Quatermass Experiment has a real insect that crosses the screen in some scenes. The audio levels in recorded music have gradually increased since the 1990s in order to make it stand out more. This is done by reducing the dynamic range, which raises the volume in quieter parts but cuts frequencies in the highest peaks, resulting in a loss of sound quality. Andorra declared war on Germany during the First World War, but did not send any soldiers because it did not have any. When the Treaty of Versailles was signed years later, Andorra was not included, so technically it remained at war with Germany until 1958 when they signed a symbolic peace document. The favorite drink of the former leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-il, was Hennessy Cognac. He liked it so much that he reportedly spent up to $1 million in a single year just on bottles of that drink. In medieval castles, the spiral staircases they had were built so that attackers would climb turning to the right, which caused the hand holding their sword to be blocked by the inner curve, making movement more difficult, while those at the top had more space to attack. Writer Stephen King mentioned that his recommended formula for any writer is to read and write at least between 4 and 6 hours a day. If you do not have time for that, you cannot expect to be a great writer, according to his statements. His daily goal is 2,000 words, and he does not stop writing until he reaches it. The lamp that jumps on the letter I in the Pixar logo at the beginning of the movies comes from an animated short they created called Luxo Jr. from 1986, one of the first short films generated entirely by computer, and the first to be nominated for an Oscar. Since then, it has remained as the Pixar mascot. When squirrels feel that they are being watched, they often pretend to bury the food they have, but in reality, they hide it in their mouths. They can also remember all the places where they have buried acorns with great precision and eat first the ones that have been there for a long time and are about to spoil. The Aztecs fought with a weapon called the macuahuitl, a wooden sword embedded with obsidian stones, a volcanic glass, which made it strong enough to cut and damage even more than an iron sword. According to a study, new banknotes create a subconscious desire to preserve them, so people who have them tend to spend less or think more carefully before making purchases. A lightning bolt can reach a temperature higher than the surface of the sun, but this only occurs over a very small area and for fractions of a second. According to a study conducted in 2007 by a university in Denmark, the real secret to happiness is having low expectations in life in order to have fewer disappointments and more surprises. An abandoned Walmart store in McAllen, Texas, was converted into a public library. It became the largest single-story library in the United States. Artificial banana flavoring is based on the variety called Gros Michel, which is different from the one found in supermarkets around the world. That is why its flavor is different. Gros Michel bananas were the most popular until the 1950s, but they stopped being used when a disease attacked the crops worldwide. Today, they can still be found in Thailand and nearby countries. Professional bowling involves oil patterns that are invisible to the naked eye placed before each game, which contribute to the speed and effect of each throw. This adds levels of difficulty. If all the bacteria that exist in the world were gathered and placed one on top of another, they would extend a total of 10 billion light years. That means that in total, all these microbes, which on average measure approximately 0.000039 inches long, could circle the entire galaxy 20,000 times. Belgium spent 652 days without a government, from 2018 to 2020, which constitutes a record for a country in modern times. They achieved this because their regions are sufficiently autonomous, and during that time, they only used an interim government to mediate and handle international matters. The family of the mother of the YouTuber Markiplier comes from North Korea, from where they had to escape before the Korean War began. In 2022, Markiplier released a documentary in which he explores the origin of his family. Studies have found evidence that humans infected with the flu virus tend to be more social and come into contact with large groups of people, which makes transmission easier. The song Plastic Love by Japanese singer Maria Takeuchi, which in recent years became very popular on the internet with hundreds of millions of plays, actually did not have a good reception when it was originally released in 1985, since it only reached number 84 on the popularity charts in Japan, compared to her other hits. The candy company Jelly Belly gathers candies that do not pass quality control because they have different shapes and sells them at a lower price. The imperfect candies also became one of their most popular products. The coldest place in the universe is in the Boomerang Nebula, 5,000 light-years from Earth, where the temperature reaches minus 457.6 degrees Fahrenheit, just 1 degree above absolute zero. Actor Keanu Reeves mentioned that he has performed 90% of all his action scenes in the John Wick films. He has only used stunt doubles in the most dangerous ones. This helped the director make more creative shots, since he did not need to use angles that hid the stunt double's face or arrange cuts in a specific way to switch between the stunt double and the actor. According to scientific conclusions, there is a reason why dogs and cats walk in circles before lying down to sleep, and it has to do with their ancestors in the wild. To survive, these animals positioned themselves with their noses facing the direction of the wind, so they could detect the scent of possible attackers in advance, which is why they turned around before resting. Slices of yellow cheese are not actually slices. When they are manufactured, they are placed in plastic at a temperature that makes it flexible like a bag, and the machine shapes them and separates them. In most countries, they also cannot legally be called cheese. According to a study, children reported that products with cartoon characters on the wrappers and boxes tasted better compared with those that did not have them, even though the product was exactly the same in both cases. There is a prison in Finland where the only security measure preventing inmates from escaping is a yellow wooden fence. It is part of a concept of open prisons used in that country. Not a single engineer survived on the Titanic. They stayed operating the electrical lights so that people could escape more easily. It is impossible to legally obtain episodes 200 and 201 of the series South Park, as they were originally made, because they include the appearance of Muhammad, the founder of Islam. On streaming platforms where these episodes are available, they simply place a box with the word censored. During the filming of the movie Star Trek from 2009, actor Zachary Quinto could not perform the characteristic Vulcan salute of the character he was portraying, Spock. So at one point, director J.J. Abrams had to glue his fingers together so he could do it correctly. The production of the series South Park saved all the original files from the first 176 episodes. This allowed them to process them again in widescreen and high-definition format. It is practically the only animated television show from before the era of high-definition televisions that can be found in this format without modifications or digital retouching. Broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts are the same species of plant, but over the years they have been selectively cultivated to modify their taste and appearance so they no longer even look like the same type of plant. In 1982, a Boeing 747 airplane flew through ash expelled by a volcano in Indonesia. This caused all 4 engines of the aircraft to stop. Fortunately, after 15 minutes, the pilots managed to restart them, even though they had lost a great amount of altitude. The plane landed safely. For people who have trouble sleeping, many experts recommend camping for a week without technology. This helps the circadian rhythm synchronize with sunrise and sunset, which improves sleep quality. Before filming the series The Big Bang Theory, the set designers went to see apartments used by students pursuing master's degrees or doctorates to observe how young scientists really lived. They based the design on that for a pilot episode that never aired, but can be found somewhere on the internet. The show was accepted by the network CBS on the condition that they discard those sets and the wardrobe of the cast and make everything more colorful, since it was labeled very depressing by the executives. A bank robber once covered his face with lemon juice because he believed this would interfere with security cameras, making him invisible. Of course, he was arrested. This event led to a psychological study from Cornell University that explained how people with fewer skills tend to see themselves as having more abilities than they actually have. When the game The Elder Scrolls Skyrim was released, the company Bethesda promised that anyone who had a baby on the launch day, November 11, 2011, and named the child Dovahkiin, the nickname of the main character meaning Dragonborn, would receive free video games from the company for life. And there was indeed a winner. Today, Dovahkiin is more than 12 years old, but the sequel to Skyrim has still not been released. There exists a violin made entirely from diabase rock, known as black granite. It was made from drawings created by Antonio Stradivari with some modifications so it could be playable. The composition of that rock gives it a specific sound that cannot be achieved with wood. A neuroscientist from California named Bruce Bridgman did not have stereoscopic vision for the first 67 years of his life, meaning he could not perceive depth. This changed when he went with his family to see the movie Hugo from 2012 in 3D, because when it started, he immediately began to perceive in 3D like most of the population. After that, it remained as if his brain had learned it permanently. Biologists discovered that birds that have adapted to urban life make different sounds, like a kind of bird rap. Unlike those that remained in rural areas, city birds make faster songs with higher notes. There is a variant of chess called singularity chess that is played on a distorted board. Because of this, the pieces can make curved movements, attack the same square in different ways, and bishops change color every time they pass through the center of the board. The cosmetics company L'Oreal has a special laboratory to grow human skin to be used in tests for its products. They have also incorporated three-dimensional printing technology into their skin cultivation process. In the late 1980s, McDonald's began selling McPizza as part of the menu, but it was discontinued because the waiting times while preparing it were very long, contrasting with the concept of fast food. Currently, only one McDonald's restaurant in the world still sells pizza officially. It is the branch located in Orlando, Florida, which has the distinction of being the largest McDonald's in the world. The popular Pez candy dispensers and compressed candies were invented in 1927 as mints intended to help people quit smoking. The first dispenser appeared in 1949. Many species of trees are connected through an underground network of fungi that provides them with nutrients, helping them share resources with one another. Scientists call this the Wood Wide Web, something like a wooden internet. The first hacking security incident occurred in 1903, when a magician and inventor named Neville Maskelyne demonstrated that the new wireless telegraph communications were not secure and could be intercepted easily. When they were presenting that technology, he took the opportunity to insert some insults toward the creator of that invention. All Porsche cars start on the left side, unlike most street cars. This comes from its tradition as a racing brand, where drivers could save a fraction of a second by starting the car with the left hand while shifting gears with the right hand, something that is no longer necessary today but remained that way. In the entertainment world, people who wrote during the medieval period are often represented using literal bird feathers to write letters on paper. And while real feathers were indeed used, they were actually trimmed so they would not get in the way and were much simpler. The original name of the restaurant Burger King was Insta Burger King when it was founded in 1953, inspired by a new cooking machine called the Instabroiler that had the capacity to cook 12 hamburger patties at the same time. The prohibition on taking photos inside the Sistine Chapel did not exist until 1994, when a restoration funded by a Japanese television company was completed, in exchange for exclusive filming rights there. After the 3 years of exclusivity ended, the Vatican decided to continue prohibiting photos to protect the works of art. A space enthusiast managed to capture a photo of the International Space Station with a regular telescope, in which even an astronaut performing maintenance outside the station is visible. Despite being an important part of the development and marketing campaign of the movie Madam Web, the character Julia Carpenter, played by actress Sydney Sweeney, only appears for a few seconds wearing the original comic suit in one scene. The same happens with the other two Spider-Women. Finland is the country with the most heavy metal bands per person in the world. While Sweden and Norway have 27 bands per 100,000 inhabitants, Finland has double that, 54 per 100,000. The leaves of the moringa tree contain all the essential amino acids, more iron than spinach, more calcium than milk, and more vitamin A than carrots. Its seeds even help purify water since they contain a coagulating protein that captures impurities. Writer Charles Dickens grew up during the period called the Little Ice Age, when the temperature around the world was colder than normal, which is why it snowed during the first Christmas seasons he experienced. This influenced the style of his works, such as A Christmas Carol, considered classics to this day. On Lambay Island in Ireland, there are wallabies, a species of marsupial that can normally only be found in Australia. They are on this island because the zoo in Ireland released them due to animal overpopulation, and they managed to adapt to the local conditions. During the Second World War, the United States Federal Reserve printed special banknotes for Hawaii so they could be declared invalid in case the Japanese invaded the island. The main difference is that they have the word Hawaii written in large letters on the back. Most were destroyed afterward, but the remaining ones are highly valued by collectors. It is possible to store large amounts of renewable energy indefinitely using a pumped storage hydroelectric plant, which works like a giant battery where water is pumped up a hill and then released downward when needed. Using the potential energy of water produced by gravity, it is converted again into renewable energy at an efficiency of 80%. In most movies where there are battles in space, when a ship explodes, there is a fireball as if it happened on Earth. But in reality, space is a vacuum, so there is no oxygen to serve as fuel for the explosion. In real life, this explosion would only be seen as a very brief flash. A study was conducted to determine how many bacteria accumulate on a pair of jeans that are not washed. For this, a subject wore them without washing them for 15 weeks, and researchers discovered that after 2 weeks, the amount of bacteria that could become harmful to health did not increase further. The director of Levi's himself has recommended not washing jeans too frequently. The vegetable that is cultivated in the largest number of different countries in the world is the onion, with at least 175 countries producing it. Wheat is the crop that covers the most territory in the world, but it is cultivated in fewer countries. Activist Martin Luther King paid the hospital bill when actress Julia Roberts was born in 1967, since her parents had an acting school in Atlanta and formed a friendship with Luther King and his family. This school had no restrictions and accepted all students without discrimination. Writer and philosopher Voltaire once described how he used a trick to win the lottery in France in 1729. Together with a friend who was a mathematician, they calculated how many tickets were sold and compared it with the sum they could win since there was a calculation error in the system. Buying a certain number of tickets allowed them to win more than 7 million francs, which at that time was truly a lot of money. The sporting goods company Reebok offered basketball player LeBron James a contract worth $18 million to sponsor him when he was only 18 years old. But the offer was rejected because he believed that Nike and Adidas would come and offer him more money. Less than a year later, he accepted a $90 million offer from Nike. Around 4,000 years ago, there were species of crocodiles called Makosukine that are believed to have been completely terrestrial and whose diet consisted mainly of mollusks. The director of the movie Scarface from 1983, Oliver Stone, mentioned that the name of the main character, Tony Montana, was inspired by his favorite American football player, quarterback Joe Montana, winner of 4 Super Bowls. The cult film Napoleon Dynamite was made with a budget of $400,000. After it was shown at the Sundance Festival, Fox bought it for almost $5 million. When it was released in theaters, it earned $46 million. And finally, when it was released on DVD, sales totaled $130 million. So it can be considered a success. For the world premiere of the Smurfs movie, all the houses in the town of Huescar in Andalusia, Spain, were painted blue. When the residents noticed an increase in tourist visits, they held a community vote and decided to keep the blue color and the Smurf sculptures. The first mention of a pen with an ink reservoir was in the year 973 in North Africa. The Caliph of the Maghreb at that time, Ma'ad al-Muiz Lidin Allah, requested that a pen be made for him that would not stain his hands while writing and that contained the ink inside. It was not until 1,000 years later that something similar was mentioned again in writings. Doritos were the first snacks sold with added flavor. Before their launch in 1996, potato chips and other snacks were sold without additional seasonings, only with salt. Doritos powder is designed specifically not to overwhelm the taste buds, so that people do not stop eating them. In 2004, in the Republic of Georgia, which is located at the boundary of Europe and Asia, 30,000 police officers were fired, including almost all traffic police, because of corruption. After this, they built glass police stations to encourage an image of transparency. From that point on, the perception of corruption and trust in the police increased considerably in that country. In the country of Canada, there is a section of the criminal code that specifically protects oyster farmers against theft. This law considers oysters as special property, serving as a strong deterrent against stealing these marine creatures. Rolls-Royce offers a course called the White Glove Experience to teach chauffeurs things such as minimizing fingerprint marks on door handles and the correct process for braking without the car bouncing. T-Rex technically existed on the other side of the Milky Way since 90 million years ago. When these dinosaurs emerged, our solar system was located roughly on the opposite side of the galaxy compared to its current position. The solar system completes one full orbit around the Milky Way every 230 million years. It was recently discovered that the bowhead whale can live for more than 200 years. That means that some of these whales that exist today were already alive on the day the novel Moby Dick was published, in which the characters spend their time chasing a whale, although in the case of the novel, it is a sperm whale. The Olympic, the sister ship of the Titanic built by the same company, was the only passenger ship that managed to sink an enemy during the First World War. This happened when it collided with a German submarine in 1918. Despite the incident, this ocean liner continued operating until 1935. The Greek mathematician and philosopher Pythagoras had an irrational fear of beans, since he said they resembled the gates of Hades, the world of the dead. He also managed to convince the people around him of this. The Australian lyrebird has great musical talent. They can perfectly imitate more than 20 songs of other birds and sounds from their environment, such as waterfalls, construction noises, and even car alarms. However, they mainly use this to trick females by imitating predator calls so that they do not escape, or also to scare away other suitors. The golden circle on the coat of arms of the flag of Portugal represents an armillary sphere, an instrument that was used as a model of the cosmos to determine the location of celestial bodies, used by navigators during the age of maritime discoveries. William Shakespeare, in addition to being one of the most recognized writers of all time, was also a businessman. He used to buy large quantities of seeds, grains, and cereals, and later sell them at higher prices when there was scarcity, but he stopped doing it when the government discovered it and prohibited him from continuing. There is a race called the Man versus Horse Marathon that has been held in Wales since 1980. It has a distance of 21.7 miles, and, as its name suggests, people on horseback and people running compete at the same time. In 2004, 2007, and 2022, a runner won, while in the other years, a horse has won. The teeth of vertebrates evolved from the denticulated scales of primitive fish about 400 million years ago. These structures, called odontodes, contained dentin and enamel, basic components of our modern teeth. Dogs have fewer taste buds than humans. We have 9,000, and dogs have 1,700. This makes dogs taste things less, so they are not bothered by foods with bad flavor or even spoiled food. However, their sense of smell is much more developed than ours. Damage Control is a Marvel comic series released in 1988 that focuses on a fictional company responsible for cleaning up the mess left after superhero battles. Unlike typical comic stories, Damage Control offers a humorous and grounded perspective, exploring how the collateral damage from fights between superheroes and supervillains affects ordinary people. Two scientists carried out an experiment in 1971 to practically test the theory of relativity. They boarded airplanes with atomic clocks and traveled around the world twice. After landing, they compared the clocks with the ones that had remained on Earth and confirmed that they were no longer synchronized, with a difference of nanoseconds. The theory was confirmed. American farmer Conrad Heyer is the oldest person ever photographed. He was born in 1749 and participated in the American Revolutionary War under the command of George Washington. He posed for a daguerreotype photo at the age of 103 in 1852. For reference, Heyer was born 7 years before Mozart. At the summit of Mount Everest, there are marine sedimentary rocks that, according to geologists, 450 million years ago were at the bottom of the sea. But over time and through the movement of tectonic plates, they rose until reaching one of the highest points in the world. Since 2012, the United States Air Force has trained more drone pilots than fighter jet pilots and other manned aircraft pilots. The first time a human set foot in Antarctica was not until the year 1820, making it the last place in the world to be discovered. However, since the 1st century, there had been hypotheses about its existence, and there are many maps drawn centuries ago that show a continental mass in the southern part of the Earth, even though at that time no one had seen that place. All the energy stored in the world in the form of oil and gas is equivalent to less than 1 week of solar energy that reaches the planet. Fossil fuels were formed from organic matter that at one point captured solar energy through photosynthesis, so oil and gas are in part stored solar energy as well. The first baby carriage was designed in 1733 by a landscape architect named William Kent. It was almost the same as the ones used today, with the main difference being that it was made with an adapter so it could be pulled by a goat or by a similar-sized animal, so that high society people who could afford it would not get tired. Lungfish can remain outside water for up to 4 years. This is because, in addition to gills, they possess organs similar to lungs that allow them to breathe air. This helps them survive in rivers that vary in water level. The 3 northern territories of Canada, Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut, have an area similar to that of the entire country of India. However, only 100,000 people live in that region. Most of Canada's population is concentrated in the south of the country. In a survey conducted in the United Kingdom in 2008, 58% of British teenagers thought that Sherlock Holmes was a historical character from real life, while 23% thought that Winston Churchill was fictional. Basketball player Kareem Abdul-Jabbar agreed to appear in the movie Airplane on the condition that his salary be increased to $35,000 because he had seen a Persian carpet that he liked that had that price. In this movie, Jonathan Banks also appears, known for the role of Mike in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. There is a species of squirrel called the vampire squirrel. It has the largest tail proportionally of all animals, since it is 30% larger than its own body. It is carnivorous, and there are legends that it eats animals larger than itself, which is why it received that nickname. The territory of Croatia has such an unusual shape that its geographic center lies outside of Croatia, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Anglerfish, which live in the deep sea and use a luminous appendage to attract their prey, have a great size difference between female and male. The females are much larger, so the male has to fuse parasitically with them in order to reproduce. It is true that if you run during the rain, you can get less wet, but not because you avoid the raindrops, but because you reach shelter faster. This is not recommended because water also reduces friction on the ground, making it more likely to fall, and it is better to get wet than to fall to the ground. The double face illusion occurs when the eyes and mouth of a person are duplicated in an image, which becomes uncomfortable to look at because it creates confusion in the face detection ability of our brain, something reinforced over millions of years of evolution. However, it was discovered that rotating the image no longer produces the same discomfort. This is because when we see a face upside down, we do not detect the features well, even if there are obvious changes. The summit of Mount Everest is considered the highest point in the world at 29,032 feet above sea level. However, the point farthest from the center of the Earth, and therefore the closest to space, would be the summit of the Chimborazo volcano in Ecuador, since the planet has a geoid shape and the part near the equator has greater height. The Disney movie Treasure Planet was the first to use an innovative animation technique called deep canvas, which combined traditional two-dimensional animation with computer-generated three-dimensional environments. Despite this, it is considered a financial failure that only earned $109 million after having a budget of approximately $140 million. Actor Brian Blessed met the artist Picasso at a convention in 1948 when he was 12 years old. But he was not convinced that it was really Picasso. So he went to ask him, and in response, Picasso drew him a dove of peace on a piece of paper. Even so, it did not convince him, and he threw the drawing on the floor. This drawing is now in a gallery and is valued at more than £50 million. Tests have been carried out on Stradivarius violins that have been sold for as much as $20 million, and it was found that their sound does not have a large difference when compared with a professional violin built today. Their value actually comes from their status as collector's pieces. The full name of the city of Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, has 168 letters and is recognized as the longest place name in the world. It is written in the Pali and Sanskrit languages. Many Thai people know it by heart because a rock band called Asani Wasan made a song in 1989 where the lyrics are this name repeated several times. Helios 1 and 2, launched in the 1970s, hold the record as the fastest spacecraft relative to the Sun ever built by humans, reaching up to 153,450 miles per hour. Although they no longer function, these probes continue orbiting the star of our solar system. Inventor Nikola Tesla hated pearls so much that he would not even speak to women who wore them. One day, he even sent his secretary home because she was wearing a pearl necklace. It is not known exactly why he had this hatred, but it is believed that it was something derived from obsessive-compulsive disorder. Tires have an expiration date that is generally 6 years after their manufacture. That means they deteriorate even if they are never used. To be sure of when they expire, they have a code marked on the inside. The last 4 digits indicate the week and the year in which they were manufactured. Russia spans 11 time zones out of the 24 in the world. When someone at one end is waking up, someone at the other end of the country is already at dinner time. In contrast, China only uses one time zone so that the entire country has the same time as the capital, Beijing. The video game Balatro, which sold 1 million copies in 10 days, was created by a single developer, Local Thunk, who created more than 100 different Joker cards with effects that alter the rules of the game. It was the most successful indie video game of 2024. There is a tunnel in Switzerland where a road passes through that can also serve as a nuclear bomb shelter. Its construction was completed in 1976, and at that time, it was the largest shelter in the world. However, over the years, it stopped being its main function, and now, in addition to being a road, it can be visited as a museum. According to projections from the United Nations, India has already surpassed China as the country with the largest population on the planet, with a little more than 1,425,000,000 people. But according to official statistics, China is still the most populated. The paperclip as we know it today originated in 1899, when William Middlebrook patented the machine to manufacture the clip with the gem design. However, the invention is also attributed to other people, such as the Norwegian Johan Vaaler, although his had a slightly more square shape. Before paperclips, papers were joined by sewing them together with thread or piercing them with wires. In the Olympic Games, the pistol that was used to signal the start of the races gave an unfair advantage to the athlete who was in the closest lane because of the speed at which sound travels. Currently, each lane has an independent speaker. A Chinese food company broke the record for the longest noodle in the world in 2017. It measured a little more than 9,843 feet long. To make it, approximately 88 pounds of flour and around 6.87 gallons of water were used. When finished, it was divided into 400 dishes for the workers to eat. The village of Masinram, in the Khasi Hills in the state of Meghalaya in India, is recognized as the place where it rains the most in the entire world. On June 17, 2022, it broke the record for the most rainfall in a single day with 51 inches in 24 hours. Samoyed dogs are among the most expensive to maintain. Because of their double coat, they require frequent professional grooming that can cost up to $100. They are also prone to health problems, so veterinary expenses can reach up to $5,000 annually. In addition, they need special conditioners, premium diets, and air conditioning in warm environments. The first jeans were officially created in 1873 when the company Levi Strauss received the patent that allowed them to place rivets on denim pants, making them more durable for the workers who wore them. A Finnish tourist broke part of the ear of one of the Moai statues of Easter Island to take it home, but he was detained by authorities in 2008. Shortly afterward, the mayor of that place declared that this tourist deserved a punishment equal to what he did to the statue, but this was not carried out, and the punishment remained only a public apology and a fine of $17,000. The coldest permanently inhabited city in the world is Oymyakon in Russia, east of Siberia. In the months of January and February, its average temperature is minus 49 degrees Fahrenheit, and the highest average temperature is in the month of July, 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Until 2013, companies that appeared on the program Shark Tank in the United States had to give 5% of the company, or 2% of the revenue, just for appearing on the show, even if no investor chose them. But this changed when Mark Cuban, one of the members of the program, gave them an ultimatum, assuring that he would not return to the show if they did not remove that clause. The blackest color of all, Vantablack, which absorbs almost all the light on its surface, cannot be bought because it is not a pigment. In reality, it is made of carbon nanotubes with specialized processes. If it were sold, its price would be higher than that of gold or diamonds. The company that developed it also made a cheaper and easier to apply version. The car brand Skoda tests the horn of its cars for the European market a total of 150,000 times, but for the cars they sell in India, they test it 500,000 times. This is due to the widespread use of the horn in that country. According to a study, at the busiest intersections of cities in India, a horn sounds every 3 seconds. Approximately 5 million years ago, the Mediterranean Sea dried up when a natural dam formed in the area that is now the Strait of Gibraltar, in an event known as the Messinian salinity crisis, exposing the ocean floor. But some centuries later, the sea returned with one of the most extreme floods that has occurred on the planet. Singer FKA Twigs, before making her own music, appeared in some music videos as a backup dancer, for example in the music video Price Tag by Jessie J. During long flights, airplane pilots also fall asleep. They have special compartments in larger airplanes that open up and contain beds. These are also used by the aircraft crew. Considering the number 0 as a number was an independent discovery made in at least 3 different regions of the world by ancient civilizations in Mesoamerica, in India, and in China. Other civilizations had the concept of 0, but they did not consider it a number. Intellectual property laws do not cover magic tricks. That is, any original trick performed by a magician cannot be registered and can be copied by any other magician without consequences. Diapause is a state of hibernation in some insects where they suspend their development in response to adverse conditions. They reduce their metabolism by up to 90%, produce natural antifreezes, and can withstand extreme temperatures. Some species remain like this for years, waiting for the ideal moment to reactivate and continue their life cycle. When bacteriologist Alexander Fleming accidentally discovered penicillin, the first antibiotic, he called it mold juice before changing the name to penicillin. He discovered it after he left a petri dish in his laboratory and went on vacation. When he returned, he noticed how a liquid had formed around the mold that had eliminated all the bacteria. Quantum entanglement is a phenomenon in which two particles become connected in such a way that the state of one can instantly influence the state of the other, regardless of the distance separating them. It was once described by Albert Einstein as spooky action at a distance. It is fundamental for technologies under development, such as quantum computing and quantum cryptography. In the movie Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, during the scenes where the enemies or the X's are eliminated, real Canadian coins were used, specifically the Canadian $1 and $2 coins. When Alexander Bain invented the first fax machine in 1843, samurai still existed in Japan. These traditional warriors did not officially disappear until the Meiji Restoration in 1868, when their class was officially abolished. So, a real samurai could have sent a fax at some point. According to a study from 2006, prehistoric predators had excellent vision, surpassing modern animals such as hawks. For example, Tyrannosaurus rex had eyesight 13 times more precise than humans, which allowed them to detect prey at a distance of 3.7 miles. Somehow they had to compensate for those little arms. The Slovak women's ice hockey team qualified for the 2010 Winter Olympic Games after defeating Bulgaria 82-0, a record number of goals. However, once they were at the Games, they lost to the host team Canada 18-0. Batman's voice in the movie The Dark Knight is much raspier and more exaggerated than in the previous film, Batman Begins. This was not the idea of actor Christian Bale. It was director Christopher Nolan who decided to alter it in the film's post-production so that it would sound more intense. In the movie Batman Returns, Batman's suit does not have boots. Instead, it uses a pair of Air Jordan 6 sneakers modified with the upper part extended. Even the sole still keeps the logo of the silhouette of Michael Jordan. This was done for practicality and comfort while filming action scenes. Phyllis Smith, who played the character Phyllis in the series The Office, did not audition for her role. She was actually working in the casting office selecting actors, but after observing her, the director offered her a role on the show. To demonstrate that the key to losing weight is not necessarily eating healthier, but consuming fewer calories, a nutrition professor consumed 1,800 calories of junk food daily, including Twinkies and Oreos. This lasted 10 weeks. By the way, he also took multivitamins and protein shakes. In the end, he had lost 26.5 pounds and had also lowered his bad cholesterol level, but he did not recommend following that diet. It was only to demonstrate that it could be done. Dragons that have only 2 legs are actually called wyverns, which are also distinguished by having a pointed tail that was said to be venomous. In ancient times, it was more common to represent dragons in this form, and today they are popular in emblem designs for places, brands, and associations. A test was conducted to understand how small children learn language, where it was discovered that speaking directly to them produced a much better result than having them listen to people speaking on television. Absolute zero is the lowest temperature theoretically possible, reaching minus 459.67 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, it is believed that subatomic particles almost completely stop moving, which means it is not possible to go any lower. In 2012, Taylor Swift held a public vote on the internet to decide where she would go to perform, in which schools could participate. When users of the forum 4chan saw this, they coordinated to manipulate the vote, and the winner was the Boston School for the Deaf. In the end, the singer did not perform there, but she sent them a check for $10,000. In the 19th century, caviar was not seen as a luxury food. It was even given for free in bars like peanuts, but over time it became one of the most expensive foods. The rock band Puddle of Mudd, which means puddle of mud, has that name because the first rehearsal room they had flooded one day and ended up full of muddy puddles. This happened from time to time because it was next to the Missouri River. The singer of the band Aerosmith, Steven Tyler, has mentioned that during concerts he needs an engineer to send sounds to his headphones from time to time so that he does not get distracted and can focus his mind, since he has attention deficit disorder. Something his daughter, Liv Tyler, has also mentioned she has, which is why she has had to take medication since her teenage years. In Japan, a circle is used to indicate that an answer on an exam is correct. Unlike most of the world, The checkmark symbol means that the answer was incorrect, although they also use an X to indicate an error. That is why those symbols were used on console controllers to select or cancel. There is a clown museum in the United Kingdom where they have 250 eggs painted with the faces of different clowns. This serves as a way to protect the intellectual property of their makeup. The curved tip that ice cream cones from the Dairy Queen restaurant chain have is patented, and, according to employees, there is a very specific way to make it so it looks the same every time. Skyscrapers shrink over the years. This phenomenon is called elastic shortening and occurs due to the compression of concrete from the total weight of the building. This must be taken into account in all structural elements. For example, elevator rails must be made in segments with small separations. In Japan, there are 3 museums dedicated to instant noodles, including the Cup Noodles Museum, the brand that sells the most instant noodles in the world. In an episode of Futurama, a device is pointed at Bender to see his interior, revealing that he uses a chip 6502, which is actually a microprocessor designed in 1975 that was used by the first Apple computers. In 2009, the singer Lily Allen was offered 200,000 Bitcoin as payment in exchange for a concert on the online platform Second Life. But the offer was rejected and she did not perform. If she had accepted, she would currently be a multi-millionaire. The name of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico comes from a misunderstanding between the Mayan inhabitants and the first Spanish conquerors in the region, because Yucatan sounds very similar to the Mayan equivalent of the phrase, "I do not understand your speech," or "I do not understand you," which is believed to be what they first heard when they asked the people what the region was called. The Koh-i-Noor diamond, which at one time became the largest in the world, was located inside the Taj Mahal in India. But when Great Britain conquered India, the East India Company took it to make it part of the British crown jewels. This happened in 1877. To this day, it is displayed in the Museum of the Tower of London. Manatees and the dugong, marine mammals that belong to the order Sirenia, are the closest relatives of elephants in the evolutionary tree. They are currently protected animals because their docile nature made them prone to being hunted, which led them to an endangered status. 10,000 years ago, lions were the most numerous mammals on Earth after humans. They lived in Africa, Europe, Asia, and America. But little by little, their numbers began to decrease. The Spanish language has approximately 300,000 different words or concepts, although the Royal Spanish Academy gathers only 88,000 of them. In 1997, actor Nicolas Cage received $20 million to play Superman in Tim Burton's movie Superman Lives. This was despite the fact that only costume tests were carried out because the film was canceled. The wheel was invented around 5,500 years ago in the region of Sumer, but what motivated people to perfect it was not transportation. What they wanted to create was a potter's wheel to make ceramic vessels. In tennis, if your hat or cap falls off during a play, or something happens that accidentally interferes with the game, the judge can order that the last points played be repeated. This may seem like an old rule, but for example, a Wimbledon match in 2008 was decided with a play that had to be repeated because a player's visor fell off. The guitarist of the bands Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave, Tom Morello, graduated with honors from Harvard with a bachelor's degree in political science in 1986, but he chose to dedicate himself to music. His compositions are characterized by having social themes. Macadamia nuts are very dangerous for dogs because they contain a toxin that affects their nervous system and makes them weak and unable to walk properly, symptoms that can even last for days. Passports, as we know them today, began to be used after the Second World War. Before that, each region had its own rules, and generally, people could travel anywhere without requiring documents. In 1996, an attempt was made to create a self-sufficient ecosystem inside a greenhouse in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona to simulate a space colony. But the experiment resulted in an atmospheric disaster because they had problems generating oxygen, and some invasive species, such as red ants, spread and disrupted the habitat. The double-bladed lightsaber used by Darth Maul in the movie Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, is actually not built as a single piece. It is 2 lightsabers joined and welded together, which is why half of it still works when one was destroyed by Obi-Wan. The first electric toaster that appeared in 1893 was invented before sliced bread in a loaf, which appeared in 1928. During part of the 19th century, aluminum was considered more valuable than gold because it was more difficult to obtain. The government of France even displayed aluminum bars alongside the crown jewels, and Napoleon III had a set of aluminum cutlery that he only used on special occasions for distinguished guests. The country of Samoa once skipped an entire day on December 31st, 2011. They went from the 30th to January 1st. This happened because they officially changed time zones to the other side of the international dateline, which required them to move forward 24 hours. A Japanese engineer named Akira Haraguchi holds the record for the largest number of digits of pi recited from memory. It took him 16 hours to say them. To memorize them, he used a method in which he assigned letters to each number and turned them into stories that were easy to remember. Musician Alice Cooper was Keanu Reeves' babysitter for a time when the actor from John Wick and The Matrix was young. This happened in Canada, where Keanu's mother, a costume designer, had connections with celebrities and rock stars such as Alice Cooper himself. Artist Jean-Michel Basquiat, also known as Samo, an exponent of neo-expressionism, appeared in Blondie's music video Rapture before he became famous. Singer Debbie Harry bought his first work for $200. To this day, his works have reached values of more than $100 million. In 2014, the community of the cryptocurrency Dogecoin donated $30,000 to the Jamaican bobsleigh team so they could cover the costs of attending the Olympic Games. The Metallica song Master of Puppets became the first metal song to be added to the recording registry of the United States Library of Congress after being considered culturally significant. A study revealed that 125 species of mammals, such as the polar bear, the platypus, and the wombat, glow under ultraviolet light because of fluorescence in their skin or light-colored fur. Although its evolutionary purpose is unknown, it could help with communication at night. In 2013, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook and later Meta, bought the 4 neighboring houses surrounding his property for a total of $30 million. He did it to guarantee his security and privacy. The first tests of penicillin were carried out on mice. If they had been conducted on other animals, such as guinea pigs, the story would have been different because they are allergic to it. The video game company that created the Halo franchise, Bungie, had to remove 200,000 copies of the strategy game Myth: The Fallen Lords from stores in 1998 because it had a problem that caused that when players uninstalled it from their computer, the default directory was the entire hard drive, so you could accidentally erase your whole computer. The Forer effect is a common psychological phenomenon in which people believe that vague and general personality descriptions are specifically accurate for them. This happens because our brain looks for patterns and tends to accept positive descriptions as accurate while ignoring what does not fit. The first Ferris wheel that was built was made in 1893 for the Chicago World's Fair. It had a height of approximately 246 feet and was specifically built to compete with the Eiffel Tower of Paris. After building it, its creator went bankrupt. The crocodiles that live in the Sahara Desert region are actually a relic from when the area had much more water and a different climate. Over time, they became trapped and forced to adapt to the new dry climate, surviving in smaller bodies of water. Eventually, they evolved into a different species. The currency of the African country of Botswana is called pula, which in the Tswana language means rain. It was named that because water is very scarce and precious in that place. This currency was introduced in 1976, replacing the South African rand. A blue whale, the largest animal in the world, can consume the same amount of calories in a single bite that an average human eats in 180 days. The 5 villages on the island of Kiritimati and Kiribati have interesting names: Tabuairan, London, Poland, Paris, and Banana. Dogs bark much more than wolves because during the domestication of the species, those that used barking as a short-range, infantilized form of communication were favored, unlike wolves which use howls more often that can be heard over long distances. During peace negotiations between North Korea and South Korea, the 2 committees in charge tried to bring a bigger flag to each meeting as if it were a competition. Sometime later, a special meeting had to be held where they agreed on measurements for the flags that no longer fit in the room where they were meeting. Front-loading washing machines use between 40 and 75% less water and between 30 and 85% less electricity than traditional washing machines that have the door on the top. The planet Neptune has the strongest winds in the solar system. It has been discovered that gusts can reach up to 1,305 miles per hour. According to one theory, humans are instinctively attracted to shiny things because in ancient times, searching for water was an important part of survival. The sun reflects on water, creating bright flashes. The reason why the roofs of traditional Asian buildings curve at the corners is so they allow more sunlight to enter through the windows during winter and provide more shade during summer. One of the seven wonders of the ancient world, the Temple of Artemis, was deliberately burned by a pyromaniac who wanted to become famous. After the Greeks captured and executed him, they made a law stating that anyone who mentioned his name would face the death penalty. The Congo River is the deepest river in the world, reaching up to 656 feet deep. It is considered a mega-diversity zone, so much so that there are many endemic species living there that have evolved differently than in other shallower rivers. Musicians Pharrell, Lorde, Frank Ocean, and Billie Eilish have at some point mentioned that they have synesthesia, a neurological condition where the stimulation of one sense automatically activates another, so they can associate musical notes with colors, letters, and numbers, which can be a creative advantage. 17,000 divorce cases in Egypt cited the mobile game Candy Crush as one of the causes. This according to a report from 2018. Part of that statistic also mentions that the PlayStation is the video game console that caused the most divorces in that country, with 250,000. The only two countries in the world that do not have laws allowing any form of divorce are the Philippines and the Vatican. In all other countries recognized by the United Nations, it is allowed. Even though they are culturally associated, coconuts are not native to Hawaii. It is believed that they arrived floating in the ocean and grew on the islands, migrating on their own. Something similar happened with pineapples, which also did not originally grow there. Flowering plants appeared in the world almost at the end of the age of the dinosaurs, and paleontologists suggest that some herbivorous dinosaurs may have acted as pollinators or seed dispersers, establishing some of the first symbiotic relationships between animals and plants. Night vision devices use the color green because humans can recognize more shades or tones of different brightness in green compared with any other color. When Eminem's daughter Haley was crowned homecoming queen at her school stadium, the rapper hid in an empty room and watched everything through a window because he did not want to take attention away from her. The highest point in Denmark, which is 561 feet above sea level, is lower than the lowest point in Switzerland, which is 633 feet. Meanwhile, the highest point in the Netherlands, despite being a notably flat country, is 1,056 feet. An English soldier named Hugh Trenchard was left paralyzed after a battle in the Second Boer War in 1899. During his operation in Switzerland, he became fond of bobsledding, and soon afterward he had an accident. Only instead of worsening his condition, it made him regain movement in his legs, allowing him to walk again and later return to the war. Only a few similar cases have happened in all of history. The country of Kiribati, which is pronounced Kiribati in the Micronesian Gilbertese language, is an archipelago and is the only country in the world whose main territory is located in all four hemispheres. Actress Courtney Cox, before being recognized for the series Friends, appeared in the video for Bruce Springsteen Dancing in the Dark, where she is invited on stage to dance with the singer. Sometime later, Alfonso Ribeiro, who plays Carlton in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, mentioned that he was inspired by that video to create his iconic dance. It is estimated that more than half of all academic research or university theses that are written are never read by the general population, only by the authors, the evaluators, and the editors of the publications. Skunks that have had their scent glands removed can be excellent pets, similar to ferrets. They are very docile and can even learn tricks and respond when called by their name. The North Pole has no land. There are no islands or continental mass there. Even though it has a surface that can be walked on, it is actually only frozen water. Theoretically, if you move away from the sun at a speed of 99% of the speed of light, you would still observe sunlight passing by you at the speed of light. This is according to the theory of relativity. No permit or visa is needed to live and work in Svalbard, an archipelago that is part of Norway and is located very close to the North Pole. In this place, there is the global seed vault preserved in permanently frozen ground. The first thing they teach you when you arrive there is how to defend yourself in case of a polar bear attack. The mascot of the restaurant, Little Caesars, has had practically no changes since it first appeared in 1959 at the first branch of the pizzeria in the city of Detroit. Beethoven's piano sonatas are known for being deeply emotional, which caused them to be misunderstood in their time because that style was not fashionable. There is only one sonata he made, number 25, Opus 79 in G major, that has a more cheerful and rhythmic style. It was an experiment he carried out so people could see what he was capable of. Even today, it remains one of the most well-known pieces in that category. King Eric VII of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, who ruled in the 15th century, became a pirate after he was exiled from the throne. Sometime later, he led a pirate attack directed at his enemies. There are only two permanent civilian settlements in Antarctica where people live throughout the year. They are Villa Las Estrellas of Chile and Base Esperanza of Argentina. In each of these places, around 60 people live in winter and 150 in summer. It is a requirement that all people who live there must not have an appendix as a preventive measure in case of an emergency, since health services are limited in any situation. Trade in the ancient city of Sparta was carried out using iron obols, a form of currency that consisted of long and heavy iron bars that were so impractical that carts were required to transport significant quantities. This was done to discourage the accumulation of wealth, although shortly afterward they adopted normal coins. In 1969, a $34 million SR-71 Blackbird aircraft disintegrated during a flight because of an obstruction caused by a piece of insulating tape only a few inches long. To this day, it remains the fastest manned aircraft ever in service, capable of reaching a speed of Mach 3, or 2,300 miles per hour. If you place 100 million atoms in a row, they would reach a length equivalent to the width of your little finger. In the diameter of a human hair, 800,000 atoms can fit in a row. The theory of tectonic plates was presented and accepted only in the 1960s, despite all the observations that had been made in the 2 centuries before that date. Country singer Dolly Parton was part of the producers of the series Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but this was in secret since she did not appear in the credits. She did not even meet the cast, but she mentioned that she sent them gifts every year. The eyes of octopuses are different from those of vertebrate animals because, although they are similar, they actually evolved independently. The difference is that they have photoreceptor cells oriented toward the light, and their visual nerves pass behind the retina. Therefore, they do not have a blind spot. Coca-Cola launched a soda called OK Soda in 1993 to have 2 products with the most recognized words in the world. However, it was not successful. But the word OK continues to be the most recognized word in the world, and in second place is Coca-Cola or Coke. The most unusual volcano on the planet is Oldoño Lengai in northwestern Tanzania, Africa. It is different from all other volcanoes because it is the only one that has produced flows with a specific carbonate composition, which makes its lava much cooler, only 1,094 degrees Fahrenheit, which during the day appears black and at night is bright red. And when it comes into contact with water, it turns white. Humans almost disappeared around 900,000 years ago when a bottleneck occurred that left only 1,200 people, caused by a period of climate change or rivalry with other human species. All of us descend from that small group of survivors. This was discovered by analyzing patterns in our DNA, which shows very low genetic diversity. Martin Luther King Jr., leader of the civil rights movement during the 1960s in the United States, and known for his speeches in front of thousands of people, once, years earlier, received a grade of C in the subject of oratory or public speaking. That grade is equivalent to about 6 or 7, the minimum to pass. The 3 countries that have formed most recently are South Sudan in 2011, Kosovo in 2008, and Montenegro in 2006. In the movie Aladdin, in a detail that appears for only a few seconds when the Sultan is making a tower of toy animals, the camera pulls back and a toy of the Beast from Beauty and the Beast can be seen, a movie that came out 1 year earlier. During the marketing campaign for the first Tomb Raider games, 2 music albums of Lara Croft were released with lyrics in English, but they were only sold in France. The vocalist was the actress Rona Mitra, who at that time portrayed the character. Today, they are considered collector's items. There is a mountain of ordinary table salt in Germany that is left over from the chemical company K+S. It measures approximately 820 feet and contains around 200 million tons of salt. People affectionately call it Monte Kali or Kilimanjaro, referring to the highest point in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro. It is considered a source of pollution for the region, but the company has permission to dump salt there until the year 2030. The longest distance you can travel in a boat in a straight line without touching land goes from the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia to Pakistan. a total of 19,939 miles. On a flat map, it looks like a curved line, but on a three-dimensional map, it is a straight line. There are only around 25 operational airships, or Zeppelins, in the entire world. At the beginning of the 20th century, they were one of the most popular forms of air transportation, but their lack of practicality and operating costs caused them to fall out of use. All the ones that remain are used for advertising or tourist attractions. Chevrolet offered an option for buyers of the Corvette Z06 that was called Build Your Own Engine. For $5,000 extra, you could go to the factory and assist a technician while assembling your car's engine, and then they would place a plate with your name on it. But they no longer do it because it slowed down production too much. Keanu Reeves was very good as an ice hockey goalie, and his dream was to compete professionally for Canada. But an injury ended his hopes, and he instead dedicated himself to being an actor and bassist. The territory of Japan extends farther east, farther west, farther north, and farther south than the entire Korean peninsula. This is because there are many Japanese islands to the south, including the westernmost island, Yonaguni, which are quite far from the main island of Japan. The African black heron has a fascinating fishing technique called umbrella fishing. It spreads its wings, forming a canopy over the water, creating a shaded area that attracts small fish and other aquatic organisms seeking shelter. In addition, under that artificial shade, it can see its prey better without reflections from the sun. Knowing so many decimal places of pi actually has no practical use. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory uses up to 15 decimal places of pi for its interplanetary navigation space missions. More than that is not necessary. Only 39 decimal places would be needed to calculate the spherical volume of the entire universe. When you tell someone about a goal or something you are planning to do, the brain releases chemical compounds that cause a satisfaction similar to what you feel when you actually achieve the goal or the activity. According to studies that have been done on the subject, this reduces motivation. The point that is farthest north in the territory of Brazil is closer to Canada than it is to the southernmost point of Brazil. LEGO used to reward employees who completed 25 years with the company with a 14-karat gold brick that weighed approximately 0.88 ounces as recognition. This exclusive golden brick was given to employees only in some factories. It is considered a very valuable collector's item today. It is estimated that in the Padmanabhaswamy Temple in India, there are approximately $19 billion in pure gold and precious stones stored in chests and rooms. Some of these have not been opened yet, so it is not known exactly what they contain. Russia borders Norway on one side, which ranks first in freedom indexes, and on the other side, it borders North Korea, which ranks last among all countries in these indexes that measure things such as freedom of the press, economic freedom, and democracy. If the planet Earth is compared to an apple, the Earth's crust would be equivalent only to the peel of the apple. On Earth, the crust is only 1% of the total volume and has a depth of 25 miles. In 2012, a woman in France received her phone bill with an amount to pay of 11,721 trillion euros, the equivalent of 6,000 times the gross domestic product of France. When she called the company to clarify the situation, they told her that she had to pay it anyway. It was only after she insisted many times that they realized the error. Canada's only land border used to be with the United States, the longest border in the world. But in 2022, Canada and Denmark signed an agreement to divide the territory of Hans Island in half, a small, uninhabited island near Greenland that belongs to Denmark. It is now one of the smallest borders in the world, measuring only 0.75 miles. Grizzly bears in the mountainous regions of North America have a somewhat unusual feeding habit. They can consume up to 40,000 moths per day during the summer season. This type of moth, high in nutrients, can make up as much as 1/3 of the annual caloric diet of some bears. In 1799, the French discovered the Rosetta Stone, a rock that had text carved in 3 different languages: ancient Greek, Demotic script, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. It was part of the construction of an Ottoman fort in the town of Rashid in Egypt. This stele, or monolith, turned out to be key to deciphering ancient Egyptian writing for the first time. It was discovered that in places where lightning strikes the ground, more mushrooms tend to grow, something that was thought to be a myth but was confirmed. It is believed that electricity activates an enzyme that promotes their growth. The first appearance of the Cookie Monster was in a food commercial from 1966 that never aired. The difference is that he had sharp teeth that were later removed when he first appeared on Sesame Street in 1969. There is a website called Brickset that gathers a database of all the Lego pieces and sets that have been made up to the present day. This is so people can get a replacement in case they lose one or for any type of reference. One of the founders of Spotify, Daniel Ek, was during 2006 the manager of uTorrent, a peer-to-peer file downloading software mainly used to download pirated content. The largest country that does not have an airport is Andorra. It only has 3 private heliports, and to travel by plane, people go to the nearest airports located in France or Spain. The other countries that do not have airports are Liechtenstein, Monaco, San Marino, and Vatican City. Green LED lights can attract more fish. They are mainly used by small-scale fishermen. In addition, they prevent turtles from getting trapped in nets by as much as 64%. The most expensive white painting ever sold is Bridge by Robert Ryman. It sold for $20 million in 2015. White paintings like these aim to provoke those who look at them, making them express their ideas instead of the painting itself expressing them. And I suppose the price aimed to do the same thing, provoke reactions from people. The well-known restaurant Dunkin' Donuts, which recently removed the word donuts from its name to become simply Dunkin', reported in previous years that of all its sales, only 8% were from donuts. Most of its revenue comes from the sale of coffee and beverages, similar to Starbucks. The popular child actress from the first half of the 20th century, Shirley Temple, once went with her mother to a shopping center at Christmas when she was 6 years old, where Santa Claus approached her and asked for her autograph. According to an interview she gave in a newspaper in 1961, this made her start to have doubts about the existence of Santa Claus. But who knows? Maybe it really was the real one and he wanted her autograph. The largest national park in the entire European Union is located in South America. It is the Guiana Amazonian Park in French Guiana, and it covers 13,090 square miles. In this same region is the longest border of France, which borders Brazil. This is because French Guiana counts as French territory. Numbers are more predictable than they seem. In a database of figures, the number 1 will appear first almost 30% of the time, much more often than the other numbers from 0 to 9. This statistical regularity is often used, for example, to detect whether a company's financial reports have been altered or to analyze suspicious elections. The work by the Italian artist Parmigianino, Self-Portrait in a Convex Mirror from 1524, could be considered the first selfie. He painted it with oil on wood while looking at himself in a mirror. What distinguishes it from other self-portraits is the distortion caused by the shape of the mirror. A man named Victor Lustig carried out a scam in 1925 in which he made steel merchants believe that the government of France was going to dismantle the Eiffel Tower and sell it as scrap metal, and that he was the one in charge of choosing the buyer. He managed to escape with around 70,000 francs. It was only years later that he was arrested. Uzbekistan and Liechtenstein are the only landlocked countries that are surrounded by other countries that are also landlocked. Therefore, to reach the sea by land, if you leave either of these two countries, you have to cross 2 other countries. Zambia is the only country that has finished an Olympic Games with a different name than the one it had when it started. This country was called Northern Rhodesia since 1911, and on October 24, 1964, while the Tokyo 64 Games were still taking place, it gained independence and changed its name to Zambia. The scene where Ralph, the character from The Simpsons, says, "I'm in danger," which has become popular in memes, actually does not come from an episode of The Simpsons. It comes from a Family Guy episode from 2014, where they do a crossover with The Simpsons. Papua New Guinea is one of the countries with the greatest cultural diversity in the world. They currently have 836 different languages, even though they only have 11 million inhabitants, which is equivalent to 1 different language for every 14,000 people.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.